Circles, I'm Jeff, and today I'll be reviewing Critical Role's Ember Roc and Monsters of Tal'Dorei Set 1. This will be part 1 of 2, and in part 2, I'll look at the Monsters of Tal'Dorei Set 2. My criteria for figures is a 10-point scale with 0, 1, or 2 points in each of 5 categories. My categories are details in the sculpt, details in the paint, the overall pose, the figure's versatility, and how much the figure inspires me to use it in my gaming. Although you can flavor text a figure to be anything you want it to be, I will be rating them as if what my players see in the figure is exactly what the characters are seeing in game. Also, I play exclusively Dungeons & Dragons, so although I will use and review Critical Role and Pathfinder figures, my reviews are based on how I would use them in D&D. With that being said, we start with one of my all-time favorite miniatures, the Ember Roc. The Ember Roc is the premium figure for the Monsters of Tal'Dorei. This beautiful figure gets a 2 for the sculpt, paint, and pose, and a 1 for versatility and inspiration for an overall score of 8. The details and the feathers for the sculpt and paint really make this figure stand out on a shelf, and the dynamic pose helps tell the story of a bird of prey swooping in for an attack. The eyes include a very fine pupil, which is a nice and easily overlooked detail, and the use of the translucent orange plastic throughout the wings brings the ember side of the roc to life. The size of the figure makes it somewhat impractical for some tables, but if you ever need an encounter with a roc, this is the best version of that monster you will find. Not the most versatile figure, but perfect for what it is. Next up, we have the Monsters of Tal'Dorei Set 1. The first figure in the set is the Deep Keeper, which looks to me like a variation of an aboleth. I give this figure scores of 1 for the sculpt, paint, pose, and versatility, and a 2 for inspiration, for a total of 6 points. The highlights for me are the details in the splashing water and in the mouth, where multiple rows of teeth are sculpted and painted. The body itself does not carry over that same level of detail, which is why the scores are a 1 instead of a 2. I would use this as a variation of an aboleth, perhaps one that had been corrupted by a mind flayer. These variations bring a lot of fun to the table and makes me want to include them in a story arc. The second figure is the Cinder Slag Elemental. I give this guy a 1 for the sculpt, 2 for the paint, and 1s for the pose, versatility, and inspiration for a total of 6. This figure makes excellent use of orange translucent plastic with the stone parts painted dark gray. This contrast gives this figure a real sense of depth and a body of cooling and warming lava. Unfortunately, you have to look very close to see this contrast, and other than that, none of the details come through. The pose is unspectacular, but this is a figure that will get frequent use as it is a better earth elemental than anything produced in the Icons of the Realms lines for D&D. Figure 3 is the Cobalt Golem. I give this 1s for the sculpt, paint, pose, and versatility, and a 0 for inspiration for a total of 4. The head of this figure just bothers me, and it looks like a bucket stuck on the body. Also, the sword is a soft plastic that wants to bend away from the hand. I appreciate the color scheme and use of shiny metallic paint. Also, that this figure could be used to represent a few different creatures. A decent figure whose flaws just outweigh its strengths. Batting cleanup is the Magma Land Shark. I'm giving this 1s for the sculpt, paint, pose, and inspiration, and a 2 for versatility for a total score of 6. While I like the detail in the body paint, the mouth is blasted in orange, which hides the detail in the tongue sculpt. The pose is standard for a 4-legged beast, and what I really liked about this figure is its versatility. It could easily be a dinosaur, giant lizard, or basilisk. I tend to value figures that can stand in for multiple creatures, and the land shark certainly does that. At 5, we have the Miskath Gorgon. This gets a 0 for versatility, and 1s everywhere else for a score of 4. My overall impression of the figure is slightly higher than my actual score, however. This is a figure that can really only be used for what it says it is, but it does that pretty well. It is a much better version of a Gorgon than previous Wizkids offerings, with the shiny paint, green plastic steam, and spiked body. I may never use this figure in a game, but if I ever need a Gorgon, this is the one I will grab. The 6th figure in set 1 is the Platinum Golem. I give this a 1 for the sculpt, 2 for the paint, 0 for the pose, 2 for versatility, and 1 for inspiration for a total of 6. The best part of this figure is the details in the paint, with letters, numbers, and symbols throughout the armor. I'm sure in Critical War lore these have their own meaning, but for my purposes, it makes me want to write the lore for it, possibly even a puzzle for the players to solve. This is also a figure that can stand in for several different creatures, which I always appreciate. I'm not a fan of the pose, however, as it reads a little silly for me, more a cowardly lion putting up his dukes than menacing golem. At 7, we have a shining example of a perfectly average figure, the vociferous serpent folk. This gets 1s all the way down for a total of 5. There's nothing about this figure I don't like, but also nothing that stands out, except for the fact that it's already separated from its base. An easy fix, but one I shouldn't have to make less than a week after opening it. At 8 and 9, we have the vociferous serpent folk ghosts A and B versions. Each of these figures gets a 1 in sculpt and pose and 0s everywhere else. I do not like these figures, and they are the reason it took me so long to pick up this set. They have truly earned their 2 score. First, I don't appreciate Wizkids' habit of making different versions of the same creature just with minor changes in the pose or weapons. The only differences between A and B here is how they hold their spear. I also have little use for ghost or invisible versions of creatures. I would much rather spend my money on 2 other creatures. I think this is a lazy way of padding production while giving little value to the consumer. I have several examples of ghost figures that use paint, so it is unacceptable to put out 2 blobs of illegible plastic, especially in a premium box set. Overall, set 1 is a little below average for me, with an average score of 4.6. If it weren't part of a bundle, I would not have purchased this on its own, mainly because of those serpent folk figures. There are some nice figures, including the Deep Keeper and Cinderslag Elemental, but they're really weighed down by those ghost figures. Once again, I'm Jeff. Thank you for watching this episode of College of Circles. If you like this content and want to see more, you know what to do. Hit those like and subscribe buttons, share, and leave a comment below. Do you agree or disagree with my assessments? What are your favorite figures from the Monsters of Tal'Dorei and Critical Role?